All right. I think I'm pretty much in the generation of Dana and Jim too. I took environmental science at Huser College in 1974, and that was my introduction. It had a heavy focus on nuclear power and nuclear waste. I've never forgotten some of the things I learned in that class. But more recently, I have been focusing as a member of Democrats Abroad and as a member of its Progressive Caucus on something called the Biden-Harris Administration Progress Reports, which we got off the ground in February and now have done 6 times monthly. And because of the overwhelming attention to infrastructure legislation, we have gravitated heavily toward that and now are kind of on pins and needles as we see each next step taking place, and are realizing, have realized for some time now, that as we move toward the Glasgow COP26, everything that is happening in the United States is linked to the pledge that Biden-Harris administration has made to step up to the plate and become a global leader again and make sure that we get back on track. So we're really interested in the climate mitigation component in the physical and human infrastructure aspects of the infrastructure legislation. And as I said at the outset, we're going to have the progress report number 7 sometime around the middle of September, a few weeks before the launch of the ECCC. And in addition to other things, it could be a great pre-launch activity for us to be able to say, the launch is coming and please join us on the 4th of October.
That sounds very good. Maybe we could say a bit about what we're expecting to happen on October 4th. Is that the Bill McKibben conference date?
That's the date that Bill McKibben that I offered to him because he said, "I'll say yes when you give me a date," and we knew that we wouldn't be approved until sometime in September. So I chose an early October date. That's significant because it's also St. Francis's feast day. Michelle Dietrich, the head of the DNC Council, is also available at that time, which will be 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. China time on a Monday, the 4th of October. So there's never a good time for all people everywhere. Weekends obviously are better, but you know, this is a launch event, but there's no reason that we can't do a lot of other launch activities later in the month. You know, we had talked about doing some stuff between the COPs, but that'll be a really busy time for Bill McKibben. Although the Kunming COP is not as not really happening in the way that it was expected to, and is but everyone's focused on Glasgow. So later that we get in October, the more Bill will be tied up, I think.
Okay.
But we don't have a lot of clarity about what that event's going to look like, whether it's going to be an interview. I know you asked me some questions, and Angela Fobbs is our communications person, doesn't get back till September 1st to start work again. And at that point, Dash and Naomi and Angela and I will connect, and probably with you and Dana Frayling as well, because she's going to do the intersectionality committee stuff. So we'll
Okay,
pull together, you know, what may be the steering committee in early September once everybody's back from vacation. The summer has been I haven't had a vacation, but the summer's been hard to get people to because you Europeans
Sure.
travel a lot.
Well, perhaps the most important thing for us to discuss now then is how to support the development and publication of the newsletter, and then how to support the event and any other pre-October 4th event plans. Bruce, it sounds like you have your hand up, so you're next. Sorry, I
I
just
want to
noticed that.
say
It sounds
that
like you already have a lot of thought gone into that.
I'm getting really, really excited about that October 4th date. And I'm also excited about how the terms of reference are developing. And I have this sense that if we can have maybe a 2-week or so time between when DA accepts us and October 4th, then what we're going to see, we're going to be able to get that event on the Democrats Abroad event page. And then boom, there are going to be, I think, a few hundred people who sign up for it. It's going to be really big. And with that idea in mind, I'm really hopeful too that we can finish the terms of reference, get them to Karen Frankenstein, get them accepted. And then Democrats Abroad has kind of a template for big events like that. And it's likely that when the time comes, they're going to say, well, we suggest that, he could make his opening remarks, and then some of the DAECCC people will ask pre-formulated question. And then if there's a little time left, there'll be time to take a couple of questions from the chat box. And that's going to be cool.
We have written to Candace and have not heard back a couple weeks ago, asking her about this event and whether she wants to participate in it. Did hear back from Michelle. So Michelle is a go. She had to check her schedule, but when I checked back in with her, she was like, yep, and thanks for the invitation. So the DNC person is willing to be there. Are there other folks that you think need to be part of the program?
I think that
Anyone?
Bill and Michelle as really great speakers will be great.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Candace is still digesting a little bit the global meeting from last weekend, and she's in the United States in Pennsylvania doing other DNC work, even with the DNC leader right now. And I'm waiting, and I think others are waiting for responses from her too. And I imagine that she'll sign in pretty soon.
Okay, great.
Maybe this is more appropriate in a events and policy meeting, but the two scientists I have lined up for the Paris environmental policy group, I don't know if that would be something you would want in this group, in the DA.
Well, my feeling would be if we organize an event in Paris, let's open it to others from DA and other countries who, depending on their time zone, may be able to participate.
Well, that was my original idea, but apparently if there's a template for doing things on a grander scale, one of the people I have is one of the co-authors of the Working Group 1 report of the IPCC.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and I have also a great oceanographer who's done a lot of the work on ocean. So, they're people I've run into over the years. So I think they'd be very interesting. Anyway, one idea might be that I might just tape her talk, the first one, and then see if, and then perhaps have her come and do an open question and answer session.
Can I ask a question that might take us off on another slight diversion, but it's a big question that's facing us here in China.
Okay.
Which is that you know, we have the global effort to target a DA ECCC. Germany has a climate caucus already. There are folks here in China who want to start such a thing here. Our tour and past practice, and I think DA leadership want us to encourage country committee creation of caucuses. That's something that should happen if it's a through the global event, or it sounds like these people are significant enough that like it, you know, or whatever, that it's not a local event. But should we use something like this to build a local French caucus?
We already have a very active, and I've led the environmental policy group for many years. Because I attend conferences so much, I meet a lot of people in lots of fields around energy. I invite them, and then they, you know, some of them can come, and they do, and it's usually very successful. So I've had a sort of a balance between various issues. There's usually a water issue. We had an expert in water pollution come. We had people on oceans before, acidification. We've had people doing energy talks. The guy that does the nuclear world report, you know, various things. So we've had, you know, just all kinds of meetings over many, many years. And some of these people would like to invite back because, you know, things change over the years. You know, someone you invited 10 years ago has something else to say now. So voila. Also to make it more available to people. So maybe I'll just continue on my own way and do my own thing and then tape it and make it available.
Yeah, no, I mean, it sounds like
I think
something
that's a
we
yes to organizing
should.
other countries, because the more people we have involved in communicating to their local people, the better.
Yeah.
You wanted to say something, Bruce, and you wanted to say something too, Alex.
Yep. Go ahead, Bruce.
I think the DAECCC is going to be one of those things that sort of takes off, and that it will be kind of an exciting challenge to deal with requests from country committees who are eager to form their own chapters. And it could be that right now we ought to focus more on just getting the DAECCC off the ground, and then at the launch meeting encourage country committee caucus development, and then have that as be one of the steering committee tasks in the first phase of the work, maybe during the last couple months of the 2021 and going into 2022.
Sounds like a good plan to me. It's true. Our primary focus at this stage has to be on getting the global organization off the ground, because that's us. Dana, I'm not saying that has to be primary over what you're doing, because what you're doing in France is absolutely important also. And I think it can demonstrate how a country committee can work with the global committee, or at least we'll explore how a country committee can work with the global committee.
Yeah, I think
process.
local, oh, sorry, Jim. I think local groups are very important because people need a time to speak and share their ideas. And that's what we've had in my group. People have, come, and some people are very knowledgeable. I mean, really experts, and other people really don't know anything, but somehow with everyone talking, and it makes it more salient in people's mind, and to be involved on a personal level makes you more involved and committed. So I think both levels, the global and the local, are very, very important.
I think that was very eloquently said, yeah.
So I don't know if you all saw Stephen Bailey sent out from Anders, who's our China treasurer, but who works for the German government on climate, a PPT from an MIT person who was also a co-author of the report.
I haven't seen it.
So it got added to the Google Drive. So I don't know if it went to the whole, I think it was emailed to the whole Google group. But Did anyone see it? I mean, email and I mean, all the different communication forms, it's hard to stay on top of, but hopefully it went out. I got it. And it was addressed to the Google group. But my question really is whether, you know, Dana, it seems like if we combine country committees, we'll have access to a lot of the 200 plus authors of the IPCC Working Group 1 report. And do we want to sort of coordinate at the global level for something like that to happen, or would you rather just do something at the local level and then make it available?
I think that, you know, she does a talk to us. I think we should record it. If we have a recorded talk, and I don't know if I can get her to speak for a whole half an hour, you know, she's a very busy person. And she's the head of all sorts of labs and, you know, all this sort of thing. So, but let's say I could tape her for a half an hour. Then we can have an event in which we show the tape, right? Because that way it can be flexible for our organization and flexible for her. Because as I said, she's busy. What if I can only get her at an 8 a.m. on a Friday morning or something, you know? This way it gives us a lot more flexibility. And then if perhaps she can then join us, if she's more available, while people have more questions for her, that would be great too. But she's a very dynamic and exciting person. So I really would like her. I mean, it's been years I've been asking her to come to speak.
It's possible she may have a talk she's already recorded too, that she made at another conference recently, or even a TED talk, who knows?
Yeah. Well, I want to squeeze more work out of her.
Of course, and originally, yeah.
Okay.
And the ocean guy I have is absolutely adorable. I adore him. Really a wonderful, wonderful person, very committed to the ocean and a real
Paris based, or where is he?
No, south of France.
Okay.
Who is that ocean guy?
Gattuso.
And what is his affiliation?
I've forgotten actually. I'll have to look it up, but I know he's, you know, doing a lot of research down there in the south. And he's spoken. He's at the COP in Paris. You know, he was at the big UNESCO event that I attended. Went on for about 5 days. Our common future under climate change. That big event. So you know, he's well sought out after as well. He attends a lot of the big climate events in France.
Could we share LinkedIn profiles of some of these people we're talking about it?
What?
Could you share LinkedIn profiles of these two people?
I once signed up for LinkedIn. I have no idea how to use it. I'm totally lost. I mean, this world of computers, I mean, I'll share with you guys somehow, but I don't know how.
Well, we'll just share their full names and affiliations, and we can find it. If you don't mind, if you have time. Okay, thanks.
In a sense, we're talking now about local group and global group coordination. And I'm trying to think about that in terms of our watchdog focus. And what this will be kind of stretching it a little bit, but one could perceive what Dana is saying is we're kind of watchdogging here in France. And we have 2 resources currently. And we're going to get information from them. And perhaps part of our model will be that we want local groups to be feeding, as Dana just suggested, information to the global group. And this then starts overlapping with communications, but also an aspect of our bulletins for the watchdog group. And in the short term, it seems as though we ought to be just encouraging as much as possible local groups and individuals to do whatever they are doing, and encourage them, however, to share information with us as much as possible, and use that kind of as a communication method to move toward more coordination and more integration of local groups with the global initiative.
Yeah, makes sense.
Good. The only thing, and you know this, Bruce, but that we have to be careful of is if we're watchdogging our countries, that we're not crossing that really bright yellow line into talking about foreign policy or policies. Right?
I'm thinking about that right now in this context. And the one area where we might, as watchdogs, get close to that line is, all the member states of the Paris Agreement are pledging their commitments for the next 5 years. And it seems to me we want to do as much as we can to get them to do what they commit to doing. And
yes,
it seems to me it would be best if we can do that as positively as possible, saying it's really great what
yes.
country X is doing, and we want to watch them do it.
Yep.
Well, I don't know what you mean by that, Bruce. I mean, it sounds good, but for example, it's usually members of people's own country who hold their politicians accountable. For example, in the Netherlands a few years back, they sued the government for not having ambitious enough climate plans, and they won. They've sued Shell also. They're very active in the Netherlands. But I mean,
that would never happen here.
No, that probably wouldn't. They would disappear permanently from the universe. But
okay. Yeah.
We watch China from afar. But anyway, on the other hand, we can bring to light what is happening. And I think what's really interesting are the solutions. I keep coming back to this, and sorry for harping on it, but I really think one of the ways that we can message powerfully to people about change is to show how possible, pardon me, how possible it is, how many solutions there are, how good this will be for our lives. And, when I hear people say things like, oh, nobody's doing anything about the climate, I go, I'm just shocked and amazed. There are thousands and thousands of researchers working on so many areas to change the world. And I think we need to bring all this forward because it empowers people. So there are people who are activists, maybe more like you guys or something. And there are people like me who try to show how knowledge can be powerful, changing of people's minds,
I think that fits with what Bruce was talking about, positive communication to countries. The question is Alex raised the question of who does the communication and how do we do that? In my experience, we haven't connected a whole lot with local environment groups in all of our countries, but that is another possible avenue of exploration.
And it could be that we would have kind of a code word for this, that we're focusing on best practices. We're looking globally for best practices.
Yep.
Yeah, good.
Yep.
My country committee chair is sort of taken over where Daniel left off because Daniel had to step down from Spain duties and DA stuff to return to the States. But reaching out to country chairs, is there a way that we can figure out the other Frances that have committees that are active working on environment? Canada might have that. Some of the other big country committees might. Germany already has a caucus, so we know about that. But I don't know what's going on in Japan or whatnot. Is there a way that we can figure out what other environmental committees exist?
And whether or not they've had events, I think that would be a great idea. But wouldn't we have to just write to every individual country head to ask, Bruce?
I ask questions like that sometimes too. And I'm going to use the Alexander's ecosystem term now for Democrats abroad. And one way to get your finger on the pulse of that is to go to that Democrats Abroad event page and say, take 30 minutes and just go from page to page for the now until say October, November, and see what's out there. Now, I just did that about an hour ago in a different context, looking for book clubs. And oh my goodness, there are quite a few book clubs in Democrats Abroad. So it could be that we would fish and find some good leads in that event page for this too.
Mhm.
Good.
Well,
Well,
we
so
can-
is that something I should ask Liz to put in her letter? Sorry, Dana.
Go ahead.
Is that something I should ask Liz to put in her letter? Asking I know she's done some outreach already to some country committee chairs. But is that something that we want to know?
Who is Liz? For those of
Oh,
us who
she's
don't know.
our country committee. She's our country committee chair, the one who's doing that letter that
Oh,
took
sorry,
over
okay.
from Daniel to the country committee chairs. Yeah, Liz Blackburn, in China.
Why not? It might be quicker to do that than to try to get a letter from Candace or from someone at the global level.
Right.
Unless,
Okay.
but it might best be a joint letter between you and Liz. I mean, you as the initiator of the global environment group.
Okay. Yep.
We
Yeah,
can
well,
co-sign
we've
it,
asked-
Dana.
Well, I think they're revising the DA website, and it might be that we could just put up a notice on the website and say, we're trying to get an idea of how many local environmental policy groups there are in the DA. Please contact so-and-so if you have a group or are forming a group in your country or local area.
Mhm, mhm. Good. Okay.
Another
Low
thing
tech way.
Another thing I did within the last week was, because I've never understood how many country committees there are. So I went and clicked around a little bit, and there's a page where they're all listed. It might be in the DA wiki page. And as I understand it, it's about 50 globally, with one group of country committees in Asia, another one in the Americas, and then twice as many in Europe. So Europe is the biggest clump. But it helps me to know that it's about 50, and that makes it more manageable for me than some unknown quantity.
Makes sense. Yeah, that's manageable. 50 is manageable.
Another question, is this what we're talking about, also a task for our own outreach working group?
Yeah, so actually this letter was assigned to the intersectionality working group, which is that sort of outreach group with Daniel, and then he went away. And then I need to be diplomatic here. It hasn't happened for a couple months, and we want to do the laboratories of the world, which is kind of what we've been talking about on this call, which is highlighting good things that are happening in countries, either policy-wise or highlighting environmental tragedies that are apolitical, that are happening around the world, and do some video around that. Angela leans towards 10 minutes. We talked on the global call, and Dana Freeling was more in my camp. I was thinking 30 seconds. She was whatever. So we have to figure out some specs for that video project before we can go to the country committees, and we have to be ready to for a slew of new volunteers with a volunteer coordinator before we can have the country committees reach out to everybody. I mean, that's some of the stuff that I'm thinking about. I kind of lost my train of thought there. There's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
Sorry, what's going into the video then?
So the idea is that the video would be a highlight of something happening in your country that
Okay.
would either be, is it Teresa, is that you asking the question?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Teresa, yes.
Okay, so like it could be some video of what happened in Zhengzhou that doesn't make any judgments about China or China policy, just shows what happened. Or it could be, hey, China's got these panda fields of solar power and they're doing all this really great stuff around solar. What we can't do is be like, well, China's building coal plants all over the world.
Or dams on the Mekong.
Right. I mean, like even on this call, we probably shouldn't even be talking about that. So like we're no, it's fine. But like,
Will you be in
so
trouble, Alexander?
So that's what we need to avoid doing. But that's the idea behind the project is to either have a positive, like here are the pandas, or here's what happened in Kunming. I mean in Zhengzhou. Okay.
Go ahead, Dan.
Well, a couple of things. One, just about your last point there, Alexander. I mean, you know, when Bolsonaro supports burning down the Amazon, you know, I think we have to be able to speak out openly about the severe negative things like that. The other thing, just if this is a question, I assume that the main thrust of this watchdog group is to talk about signaling policy opportunities or activity opportunities in the US context. Well, I mean, a piece of legislation might be up. We might want to look at that closely, put some input into it, given our global perspective on the issue, you know? You know, because if we've looked at these things from our countries, we might see some areas to improve. So is that sort of the main thrust? Is it mainly geared to the US policy and our input to that?
I think connecting the two makes sense. Exactly. We talked earlier about finding best practices. So
Yeah.
maybe the gigantic Chinese solar farm are a best practice that we can show off and say, hey, China's doing it, why can't we? We have gigantic deserts, you know, we have plenty of places to put this kind of stuff. And if we manage to maintain a positive outlook, as you were saying, everybody needs hope. We need to talk about the things people are doing. So if we collect examples from multiple countries of that, we can share them. Bruce?
Yeah.
As we're trying to organize our watchdog activity too, and thinking about the United States and then outside the United States, but now focusing inside the United States, it seems to me we have a congressional watchdog activity that's really, really important. And another one might be administration watchdog activity, focusing, for example, on the EPA. What is it doing? And the Department of the Interior and things like that. And I can imagine as we're moving forward that we might decide that we're going to say, okay, who wants to volunteer for congressional watchdog? Who wants to volunteer for the administration watchdog activity? And maybe we'll have domestic and global watchdog activity.
Yeah.
Yes, I would just encourage us to start local and build out. I agree that we want to be vocal about Bolsonaro and places like that, but I think it's tricky for us as DA, and there are lots of other places to do that, and that we'll have an easier time developing it if we develop from the center, being the USA, out. Rather than, and I don't think of the US as the center, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
The USA is not the center of the universe?
No, I'm not going to say that either. This call's being recorded.
Do you need a more encrypted site to have these talks on, Alexander?
I feel fairly safe. Hard to know. You know, I've never I don't really want to test that out.
But
Right.
we all know you love China and think they're doing a great job in the world, right?
Yeah, we all know that. I've heard that
We all
directly
know
from
that. You
Alexander.
said it so many times.
He's been extremely positive.
Absolutely.
It's complicated.
But I also think, getting back to Bruce's comment, if I may, that it's true that we may need a division of labor in terms of somebody being in charge of learning about some stuff. But I would like the point of that to be that that person, let's say if you're in charge of what the EPA is up to, keeps everyone else informed, because I don't want us to become all too specialized, you know, and or to feel that we can't be learning about something because it's somebody else's area, you know. I think we have to keep a certain openness. So I agree with you, Bruce, but with a little caveat that we keep it as a point of sort of a reference person for information.
Very important. And I think on the last call, we sort of talked about Watchdogs feeding into either bulletins and the quarterly newsletter, and the newsletter might become more frequent than that. But I think if someone was just in charge of watching the EPA instead of the whole administration or whatever, they could do an EPA write-up periodically and share that out, and then get other people involved with watching the EPA or advocating or doing advocacy work with EPA eventually. But I think Bruce has got the right idea of, like, maybe we just begin watching Congress and the administration, and then we start breaking it into federal agencies, and then we start breaking it into laws or whatever, because we got to start from what we have, which is a small core of volunteers, and then build it.
Yeah, Bruce.
Having said that, in thinking about Diana Powers' focus on, it seems a little bit like it might be IPCC, United Nations oriented. I think it's really important for us to have a focus on what's going on there too. And if Diana were willing to say, okay, I'm willing to look at that sort of thing, or somebody, I think that would be really important.
I would probably myself be looking more at, coherent energy systems of the future. I know a lot about climate. I don't keep up to date with every little thing, but I used to give talks on climate 15 years ago. And right now I'm into solutions. So that's what I really want to work on.
So would you be watchdogging the IEA or
I already watchdog the IEA.
Right. But there are opportunities at the international level if it's not the IPCC.
By the way, I could also invite people from the IEA to talk.
Yeah, good.
Diana, what was that you just said? Did you say climate energy solutions?
Coherent energy policy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Energy, but I also know people at the IEA that I could invite to speak.
I have this sense that we're also kind of developing a future kind of table of contents categories for our bulletin. And it seems like we're even getting close to having some titles for them. And what Diana just said in her previous comments seemed like it could be one of our categories or titles for our bulletin.
Yes. Well, should we talk about next steps? I think each of us has their own personal list of next steps coming out of this. At least I do. And just before this meeting, I was actually having a meeting with a newly forming Israeli, I'll call it an NGO, that's developing a vision for a new economy and how to structure venture capital and business within a new economy in a way that would support far more climate-oriented leadership, far more climate-oriented entrepreneurship and stuff like that. things are coming from every which direction. I mentioned that because I've been reading material on new economy, post-capitalism, et cetera, for years, and they happen to have a vision that was the clearest and most detailed. And they're actually doing their best to execute it. And I'd see that as the only way to get this done. It's not going to come from the top down. It'll come from initiatives from the bottom. Yeah, Dana.
Yeah, for example, I could see an event, and maybe it would be a local one. I don't know how great the interest would be, but for example, if we did an event on climate finance and you did a presentation on that NGO, I could talk about something like, you know how Europe has now dubbed the European Investment Bank as the climate bank, and they have a very high level of required investment in climate, pro-climate things. And there are initiatives all over the place right now on climate finance. So we might be able to put together a panel, maybe at the end of the year or beginning of next year, on climate finance and the various initiatives.
That seems like another really good bulletin and event category division of labor item for this group. And after I heard that there's this group in Israel, and then there's the European Investment Bank, I then thought about how there's a discussion about whether or not the infrastructure legislation in the United States is going to lead to a similar kind of bank in the United States. And I think we ought to be watchdogging that.
Alex, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I actually need to run because I got to deal with family stuff. But I hope if you have any last questions for me before I skip off here.
Next meeting, Bill Bean said he has trouble joining our meetings since he's running a business full time, but he has not gotten back to me with what schedules would work for him, and he may not be possible. Should we just schedule our next meeting for 2 weeks from today, same time, and follow that rhythm? And yeah,
What
Bruce,
date is that, Jim? What
I'll have
date?
to look.
I don't have my school schedule yet, and I will be back on campus, so it's unlikely that I'd be able to attend, but I'm sort of attending, trying to attend as many working group meetings as I can, but I don't know that I'm a member of the committee.
Is it going to work better if we do it on a Saturday or Sunday?
Yeah,
Well, maybe one of
It would for me.
I'm not a doodle expert, but we could set up a doodle poll.
The 9th of September would be 2 weeks from now on a Thursday, and the 11th and 12th would be Saturday and Sunday.
I would prefer weekends now that, you know, the full school year is starting again and my conference schedule is starting again. So I'm pretty sure to be available on weekends.
Jim,
Okay.
would you be willing to ask Bill if he'd be available on the 11th or 12th?
Anisha.
Sure.
The 11th might be complicated with events. I don't know if there will be special events that day.
Oh, because of the 9/11 anniversary? I don't know either.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the 12th, I have that's the DA Agricultural and Environment event that I think Germany is leading at 2 p.m.
Oh, right.
Europe.
That's right.
One
Yeah.
option might be to
They're doing
meet
that,
an hour before that meeting.
That's true. Yeah, that's an idea. We're all planning on attending anyway. Okay, shall we say
That's a
that
good
then?
idea.
That's
Yeah.
our tentative meeting time, 1 hour?
Let's do that.
Okay.
Give me the date again.
September 12th,
The
a
12th?
Sunday.
Yeah.
I have the DA and Ag meeting as 2 p.m. Central European time, so we would meet at 1 p.m. Central European time.
Oh, what's the time difference?
6 hours to China, I believe. Is that correct, Alex?
It's about 8. Yeah, it's about 8 p.m. here. Is it Central? 2 p.m. Central?
2 p.m. Central Europe time.
Yeah,
For
so it
the
would be
Ag
8
group,
p.m.
and
here.
we would meet 1 hour before that, so 1 p.m. or 7 p.m. your
Right.
time.
Right.
Okay.
That work, Teresa?
I believe so, yes, as far as I know.
Okay, good.
Great.
We've accomplished a lot. Perhaps we can close here,
Sure.
because I think we all have our own individual marching orders, and you know, we're not a tightly controlled group. We're an entrepreneurial group. We just got to get a lot of things done.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks, Jim. Thanks
Yeah.
for pulling it together.
Nice
Yeah, well,
to see
thanks
you
to
all.
everybody for attending.
Nice to
Okay.
hear you, Teresa.
Yeah.
Maybe next time I'll get my video going.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks you all.
Great.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Bruce. Bye.
Bye bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye-bye.